Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome to my overview of Farming Simulator 22. So, not exactly the newest game, but we're in the midst of the Steam Summer Sale. I picked it up on a whim because it's on deep discount. I suppose it is topical, it has been in the back of my mind because Farming Sim 25 got announced for coming out this year. Now, I'm actually a bit of a late stage fan. My first Farming Sim was 2019. I covered this I think in a separate build in pre-release a couple years ago, but I didn't actually have it on Steam, so I thought, bugger it, I'll pick it up and have a look. So I've put 2 hours in, which is my overview format, generally speaking. If you're not across it, I just have a look at the first 2 hours of a game because it's a Steam refund window. That way I can get a bit of an idea of a game, give broad strokes info to you and send you on your way. And there's a whole weird release cycle that, like, every odd game for a while there, I think was PC, and then every even one would be for like mobile or Switch and that sort of stuff. In fact, I think I looked at one of the Switch ones at one point, but it would seem as the technology is sort of ramping up and it's following the same arc, I suppose, as like AAA. Like the development times seem to be getting longer. For example, I think, traditionally this would have been like 21, but it was 22, so maybe it was a year later. Anyway, I don't think people were really expecting Simulator 25 for PC to be announced this year. I think a lot of us were expecting 26 to be much more reasonable. So it's very exciting. Anyway, so there's a whole thing, you can go down that rabbit hole, but that's my cursory look at it. This game it's really good. It can be a huge time sink. 2 hours doesn't quite do it justice, but it is cool to just sort of dip back in and have a bit of a look at it. If you are remotely curious, maybe you've been caught up in the zeitgeist of watching like Clarkson's Farm, which I did, and I think it's really cool. It kind of triggers a compulsion for me to go out and farm. I know I'm not the only person as well, sort of return to nature and get off the computer. But yeah, this game is fantastic. It'd be a good sort of warm-up for 25 coming out later this year, which I will definitely be looking at. So look, title says it all. It is in fact a farming simulator, but it's very high production. It's very much, if you're a nerd into the farming world, like all the vehicles and tools, like it's all very licensed, John Deere, things like that. But beyond that name, I don't really know much more. It's almost like how you get, FIFA team licensing or Forza licensing things like Ferrari and that sort of stuff into their game. This does the same thing, but for the tools of the farming world. So yeah, if you're not across it, this is a cut above and separate from what you would call modern indie simulator games. The ones where, wall painting simulator, and they're a bit more of just a alpha idea slapdash put together. This is very high production. Again, I actually put quite a few hours into 19 and got into that and did a bit of crop farming and that, and it seems that animals, I think they might have been added at a surface level in 19, but they're pretty cool in this. In fact, in my time picking up this now, I've made a chicken coop and I filled it up with chooks, and then I had to, deliver grain to feed it, so I got it from one of those big bags in my forklift, and I managed to roll my forklift over, so it's all I've already got a bit of an emergent story of Scarlett's bloody head injury driven farm. But it's really cool. It's quite educational. It's a lot deeper than what you would think if you're not a farming enthusiast or whatever. So like to give you a run through of my short time just now spent with it, because even though I am an absolute idiot rookie that doesn't know very much, I would still probably know a lot more than someone coming into this fresh. And I will say that I still have fond memories of learning and the learning curve of Farming Sim 19, a lot of Googling, that sort of stuff. There is a lot of help contained within this game, and it goes a long way to teaching you how to, farm a basic crop, which is way more complex than you might think. But a lot of the tool tips in the shops, like, you go, what's a cultivator or whatever, you mouse over it, it'll tell you. And then there are sub-menus as well. There's a lot of menus, but, it all starts to come together. But there are menus that will explain the stages of getting a crop plowed, sown, cultivated, weeded, fertilized, all this sort of stuff. So the basic stuff, but then all the other things that are like yield multipliers on top of it. So you can do a really basic crop, I suppose, but you're trying to get the most out of your yield. This game, I believe, introduced seasons, and look, I haven't gone down the modding rabbit hole, but there's a huge modding scene in these games, and I think seasons was something people were already kind of implementing in previous versions. And so a lot of that ties into it. There's a lot of readable metrics of the feedback on your crop. So there are certain crops that you can't actually plant at a certain time of year now. Like my game seems to have started by default in August, and I tried to lay down wheat and it was like, nah, get stuffed, you can't do that. It literally said no, so I did a quick pivot to something like canola, which I don't know anything about, but learning as I go, having to get rollers to crush the ground and push the rocks back in, that sort of thing. And yeah, the prices are obviously seasonal as well. So in these sort of games, generally you would want to get like a silo. So even though you harvest like say a wheat yield, you may not actually want to sell all of that straight away. So you want to stockpile it a bit. So it's very much about balancing sunk costs. I put it on hard mode because I kind of like that challenge, and you only start with $500,000, and I've nearly gone through all of it just finding my feet again and buying and leasing everything. You don't have to buy the tractors and stuff outright, which makes so much sense, especially for seasonal farming. So if you're doing a wheat crop once a year sort of thing, it probably makes much more sense to just lease the seeder for that particular harvest. But yeah, to give you an idea, so I bought a very small farm plot, pretty much. It looks like the one you're supposed to buy, kind of starts where I started. 3 little plots and some decorative farm bits, and basically I just went about harvesting the existing crop, which I think was oat. And it's cool, you can rear different animals. I believe you can raise horses, which I didn't really look into, but it seems you can feed them oats. Like my chooks, for example, you can feed them wheat, and what I was hoping to do was sow wheat, so then I wouldn't have to actually buy feed for the chooks. Create your own sort of production chain. And on top of that, I know I'm sort of tangenting around a bit, but I do want to cover off the depth. They seem to have introduced production chain buildings and all that. Like there's biogas plants, so you can really create entire giant factory facilities. But even things like bakeries and that sort of stuff, I still remember when they introduced that. It may well have been with this game actually. The idea that, it's all good and well that you can get eggs, which I got my first batch of eggs, and that made me pretty excited. God, I'm a boring old man. And, but you can get all your flour and all this sort of stuff, and essentially you can do things like make cakes at bakeries as an end of production chain of all the growable stuff that you did. But yeah, so, I took my existing crop of oat and got a harvester, and then you got to buy the head for that as well, the combine basically, and then you can press shortcuts in the shop. So it's like what combines with this vehicle, and that's how you buy, to buy the combine head for the combine. And then beyond that, you might need a trailer to transport that around to get it into hard to reach places, that sort of thing. And then that's going to have to pipe out, and so I needed to get a trailer, which I could use with a tractor that I bought. And then you need to replow the fields, especially I think if there are root things, like maybe something like potatoes, those sort of things, I think you have to replow each time. But at the very least, I believe you replow every 3 crops, and then you can cultivate, you can lime. Maybe it's liming that goes every 3. Oh my God, I don't know. And then I got a weeder that I didn't need. But the weeds is a whole thing, so you can spray liquid pesticides and fertilizer and that sort of stuff. But if you do that too late and you let the growth cycle on the weeds go too far, then I think you can't poison them. You actually have to drag them out with a weeder. So what you would think as just a square of land that you put wheat grain into and grow is actually very complex in the most satisfying way possible. Anyway, look, this bit of a trip down memory lane for me. Like I said, I haven't played farming sim games much in recent times. A lot of the way I've run my channel in the past doesn't lend itself to, not a lot of people want to see 500 episodes of a dickhead trying to learn how to farm. So it's exciting for me to come back to this and check it out, shout it out, let people know, especially if you're not necessarily a farming sim enthusiast. I would say roll the dice, take a chance, like I did when I picked up 19 back in the day as a weird Christmas present. And that was my entire Christmas break, was playing Farming Sim 19, because I just fell down the rabbit hole. As someone that for years looked at this sort of game as not for me. Anyway, wonderful game, very cheap, still holds up incredibly well, infinite hours of depth. Check it out. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.